I don't know what might be of concern to you, but I'd certainly be very glad to hear.
Well, my problem kind of is old and new together. I lost a set of twins about 2.5 years ago. And for me, that was a first pregnancy, and working on my career and whatnot, I kind of put pregnancy aside, thinking when I'm done with my career, I'll have children. And so that first pregnancy didn't work out very well. And with my age, I'm 35 now, as I'm getting older, and I've been trying for 2.5 years to become pregnant and have not done so successfully. I've kind of, started to feel, like a failure. And I think it came from once I read a poem, and the poem said that to have a child is to have your only chance of making a miracle with God. And I never looked at it that way before. I always thought pregnancy was the pits. You were fat, you were ugly. And I didn't enjoy my pregnancy at all. And when I did start to enjoy it, that's when I lost the twins. And so now I'm upset that I can't become pregnant. But right now, at this very minute, I could be. And that's scary to me, too.
But it's really a sort of a double problem, that you would like pregnancy to be something you would enjoy, and yet when you began to enjoy it, you lost the twins. And now it really is a confusing situation, isn't it? Wanting a child very much, wanting that miracle, yet not being sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'm sure that I want that. Okay. I'm more afraid that if I am pregnant this very minute, that there's loss down the road.
Mm-hmm. That's where the past comes in.
Right.
It might end in tragedy again.
Right. And it's one of those points now where every month I wait to see if I'm pregnant, and every month I'm just disappointed.
So it's a recurring issue.
Right. It never seems to get any better, and I don't really discuss it with anybody. I don't talk to my husband about it because he has the pain from the past as well.
So it's something that really has been quite bound up in you. You haven't felt free to talk about it.
Right. And I guess I question myself in a lot of ways, too, as if I had made attempts earlier, would it have been easier?
Should I have laid aside my career a little earlier and tried to become pregnant?
Yeah, because now, when most of my friends are having children and raising them, I have a job to go to, that's fine. And 4 or 5 years ago, to me, I'm out in the world, I'm making money, I'm doing a good job, but now there's a lot of things that I don't have, nobody to leave anything to, and it's a sad thing. Christmas is coming. It's probably on my mind more because I would have had somebody that's 2.5. I would have had 2 little kids, 2.5 years old.
And so you're asking, did I make a mistake?
Yeah. I guess that's a scary thought, to think that your whole life has been a mistake along the way.
Did I make a very grave error in not having made the attempt sooner? Right.
And I look at it that more and more things seem to play on it. The pressure from my family. I'm an only child, so consequently my mother always wanted to have a grandchild. She has a terminal illness now and could possibly die. It could go on forever, for a long time, but as if I haven't given them what they'd like to.
But there's a lot of pressure toward, you must have a child, you must.
Yeah. But I guess I think of so many things that go on with that with me. I believe in you either win or you lose, and to me right now I've lost.
I'm not quite sure. You feel it is win or lose and you have lost?
Yeah. To me I play games, I do things to win. And in the pregnancy, I wanted to win to have the child, and instead I lost. And I don't like to play things that I could lose.
So that's one game, a very important game that you feel you lost.
Yeah.
And you're the kind that likes to win.
Definitely. Definitely. And I like to make people happy as well. And I know my husband, my parents, all of those other people would want, you know, a child, an offspring, a grandchild, as well as I would like one. You know, it's not like I'm just trying to do it for somebody else. I think there's that part of me that says, you know, this is normal, this is proper. You lost twins. How can you replace? What can you do to have that?
So you'd like to not only satisfy yourself, but all these other people too.
Yeah, I think everybody would be happy in the long run, and me especially.
It just means a tremendous lot.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I could, if I cannot have children, I guess I would have to deal with that. But I don't think there's anything I can replace that with. I don't think, career used to be extremely important to me, and now that's not the ultimate thing in my life.
So that if you don't have a child, that really leaves a terrible gap.
Yeah, a very big void for me.
A big void.
Right. I have a very loving, nice, wonderful husband, and I care about him a great deal, but there's that extra thing that we could share together, you know, out of the love that we do have. And somehow I feel cheated.
You feel cheated out of something that would enrich your marriage as well as you?
Yeah. And like I said, with the possibility of being pregnant right now, there's just, it's like I don't believe I'm telling a whole crowd of people this, but I don't really want to tell anybody because I'm afraid of, you know, of the loss, and yet it bothers me tremendously.
No, I can understand that. That this kind of thing we're mentioning, it might be superstitiously wrong or something. I mean, it might...
Well, that, and I guess if I am pregnant, I would like it to be nobody knows until they can really, really tell, and then maybe it's going to last that time.
So that in many ways it's something you still want to keep to yourself, and yet find yourself telling a lot of people.
Yeah. As far as telling anybody my possible condition, that I haven't done. And I don't know, it's something that I'm not going to tell my parents. I don't even think I'll tell my husband for quite a while.
So it really is something highly personal and kept within, and easier to talk about to strangers than it is to people who mean a lot to you.
Yeah, because the people that mean a lot to me could also have the hurt again. And
you don't want to lead them on and then think to another tragedy.
No, not like the last one.
That is very hard.
And I don't know, I guess maybe I should just see what comes of it, you know. Except if something good comes, fantastic. If something bad comes, then I'm hurt again. Nobody else is.
Ah, I see. If you keep it to yourself, then if it all works out, great for everybody.
Right?
If it's a tragedy again, that's for you alone.
Yeah. I guess maybe I think that I have some guilt left over from the last time. I think whenever you know, even though it was a premature birth, if you lose a child, I think you place some guilt on yourself. And I don't know, I guess I just do wondering if I shouldn't have done certain things and whatnot.
Could I have made a difference? Could I have done something differently?
Right. And I try to, you know, in my head say, no, you had a less schedule than you usually have. You were more calm. You were resting more. I say all those things to myself logically, but when you go through the loss, there's no answer. Then you're kind of stuck with, well, I was the keeper and didn't do well.
So your mind says you were doing as well as you could possibly do, but something in you says, well, but maybe you could have done something. You were the keeper, and you did lose.
Yeah. And I think that's part of that, though, is the reason that I still want to have the child. Not only do I want one, but I want to fight back and say, hey, this doesn't happen to me.
I'm a winner.
Yeah. And see, then it comes again into things like, I've always had everything I wanted. I was an only child. I was probably a little spoiled. I had a job. I had a career. I've had money. I have a house. I have a decent marriage. I have all the things that sometimes people make comments about of, oh, well, now she has everything. And that one thing that I wanted, I didn't get.
So it would look as though, no, you've got everything. Not the important thing you want.
No, which then turns things for me into being the failure aspect. Not doing well, of being the failure.
Yeah. So at some level, to yourself, you're a failure.
Yeah. But I suppose all I can do is keep working at it, maybe. Of course, then there's the biological time clock. And so not everything is in my corner.
That's right.
And usually I can work on things or put things in perspective and do things that I have some control. And this is something I don't have control of.
That's right. There's some things you can't manage, you can't manipulate, you can't control.
No, not this one. At least I don't see that I can.
And you're the kind of person who is accustomed to controlling things, getting things your way.
Yes. Hasn't worked out bad so far, except for that aspect.
In a lot of ways that's worked fine, but not here.
No. And there is no way to have the control. I mean, I don't know if it's God or fate or whatever is going to make that determination, but it's out of my control. And
I didn't get the last.
It's out of my control. Even though I have different kinds of medical support that say that I'm healthy and normal and everything is fine, and I go to a specialist at this time so that I can try to make things work better. Nothing seems to be working right anyway. So then I'm back inside myself again with, well, what's wrong with me? Why isn't this working? How hard can it be?
That seems to be evidence to you. There must be something wrong with me.
Yeah. It's nobody else's body that's not functioning correctly. It's mine.
So this body of yours is something that in this respect you really can't control.
No. And I mean, I do everything to even try. I do everything the doctor says. I eat the right foods. I try to stay in halfway decent shape so that I'm healthy. And even that with the loss, nobody can understand how I would lose a child being as healthy as I am. And active and not the sickly type.
But there's no reason at all for not having a child except that we don't have one.
So they tell me. But no matter how logically even the doctor tells me, it's a matter of time, it's a matter of time. Something's not functioning properly. Otherwise, it would be right. It would be there.
And so that brings that sense of failure.
To me, yes. And I guess I want to succeed, and I want everything that I want. And then I look at things and I say that I'd rather give up my career to have a child. If I didn't have a house, that's fine, I could do something else. But I can't seem to win at that aspect.
If there were some sacrifice you could make in return for having a child, sure, you'd make it.
Yeah, I would. I would do whatever had to be done. You know, and I make my vows that if I do have a child, I would be the best little parent and all this good stuff. But, which then...
That really touches you. You just promise to do everything right.
Yeah, I do.
If.
Yeah, if. And I don't know, without the control, I just have to wait, I guess.
But it's hard not to have the control.
Yeah, if I had the control, you know, it would be done and everything would be fine, and I'd push the clock back and I'd have a nice little family, a little boy, a little girl, everything would be perfect.
That sounds as though there's some grieving over what might have been.
Well, I think there is to a degree. I think that I dealt with that loss fairly well, that, you know, it's not something that I totally dwell on, and yet with the thought of a pregnancy, there's the thought of what happened. With the thought of Christmas, there's always the thought of that we visit the grave. And all those things come up and create some sad
tragedy
feelings.
keeps being lived over again.
Yeah.
Especially perhaps at this season.
Yeah.
So the grief is still there.
Well, I think the grief comes and goes. You know, there are some times that are fine, that, you know, that it's very rational and logical to me. And then there's other times that, depending where I am and whom I'm with and what's about and what children are there, you know, things pass through my mind.
It can hit you.
Yeah, it does. It comes and goes. I had to say that you've made it easy to talk about this, though.
I'm sorry?
You've made it easy to talk about this. Somehow I get the feeling that you know, I don't think you can understand, I don't think you can feel that same feeling, but I think that you can be empathetic with the situation.
You know, I can't feel it in my body what you feel in yours, but at least I have made it easier for you.
Yes. And just, you know, thinking about it in respect to my control, and I guess I've come to my own decision or conclusion that I've got to kind of just sit and wait and let what happens happen. But
I realize I really can't control this. Much as I'm accustomed to controlling, much as I'd like to be able to control it, I cannot control this.
No matter how hard I try, I can make the best efforts, but I can't control it completely. And yet that doesn't mean that I still don't feel like I've made some failure along the way.
You say that doesn't keep you from feeling something of a failure.
Yeah. I can rationalize and say, I can't control, there's nothing I can do about it, that's the way it's meant to be. And yet, down in here, it still feels like, well, there's something you could have done or should do or whatever.
In some sense, I failed.
Yeah, maybe not me. Maybe not me exactly. I don't.
Maybe not you.
No, not me exactly. I mean, I'm not totally responsible. You know, I didn't have the control.
I did what I could do, so I'm not the failure. That isn't it exactly.
Well, I guess I know I'm not exactly the failure, but there's still that feeling inside me that says that something else could have been done. And maybe
it's a bodily feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's not a thinking thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I realize that.
Mm-hmm. But something in you says something might have been done.
Yeah, maybe it's the loss feeling. You know, maybe it's something that says I don't have this and I still want it. Mm-hmm. And so it's failure of not being able to fulfill that.
Mm-hmm. Feeling that you're not really fulfilled.
Yeah. Not complete.
Like a real sadness you carry around with you.
I think it's a sadness, and yet I think sometimes it helps me in some of the things that I have to do and some of the things I do.
Are you saying in some ways it's made you stronger or more able to meet life?
Yeah, I think through some of the things that I've gone through, even with the relationship with my husband, I think through that episode that we shared, there was a lot of strength between the two. And even though there has not been a lot of discussion, you know, as far as how we felt in relation to the loss, I saw a side of my husband I'd never seen before, which showed me a great strength in him.
So that in spite of the grief and the loss, some good things emerged from it.
Oh, definitely. If anybody can say something good came from that, I think the love and the strength are good. I guess I would just like to complete that, though. I'd like to complete that, though, by being able to give him a child.
It's a very deep wish.
Yeah.
I see that our time is almost up. Is there anything more that you want to say?
No, just that I appreciated talking with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
But hold it, because they may want to ask you questions as well as me. After we've sat here for just a minute, possibly you'd be willing to think back and say how the interview seemed to you, and then I'll say how it seemed to me, and maybe we could let them in and let them ask questions of us. Would that be okay?
Sure.
And maybe Ruth can join us too, and I'll take part. Do you want to say how the interview seemed to you?
When I first came up here, I felt very, very tight, and I know that I cross my legs a lot when I sit, and somebody may interpret that as closed. I think this is just comfortable for me. I know that after we took the minute to kind of get a little composure, I felt a lot better. And then as we started to talk, just your facial expression and some of the things that you repeated back to me made me understand some of the things that I was feeling and saying, as well as I think I became more comfortable, because I remember touching my chest when I was talking about my feeling, and it wasn't an angry touching or an upset. I was kind of warm and soft, and I felt that way. And I guess the only thing else that I could say is that as I think about it now, and since I teach at a university level about you, and some of my students always wonder how, you know, where do you move and how do you go with just and moving on. I found it very easy to want to talk with you. I didn't feel like I had to prove myself, that you had any judgmental type of attitudes towards me, and I felt very comfortable.
Okay, I think as far as I'm concerned, I felt a little clumsy at first in getting into your world, but then I began to feel more and more comfortably there, as though I really did understand. And I don't know, there was a feeling of being really privileged to enter into your sense of loss and what you'd been through and your hopes, and then your characteristic of being the one in control, and that here you'd run into something you couldn't control. And I too was moved, and I'm not sure that I know all the significance, but you're putting your hand on your chest was it was as though your body was speaking, and I was trying to hear that. I felt that in terms of movement, yes, there was some movement, not fantastic, but it was a half hour of exploration. That's what it seemed like to me, of getting into different aspects of it. And I felt good about the relationship. One thing too, because they have turned down the house lights, so we were just alone for me. There just was no one there, and I felt very comfortable in the relationship. Ruth, do you have any comments you want to make? Then we'll open it to the audience.
Which seemed important to me was the use of silence. The way in which Peter Ann was silent, but it seemed to be a working silence. Twice I felt that, because she came to something different at the end of the silence, and it was not interrupted. I don't know whether Peter Ann felt that or not.
I know that when the silence occurred, I know that I was kind of trying to think and feel what was going on with me. And so I guess I was trying to draw some kind of closure to where we had been and find what I had touched upon.
Get more familiar and more comfortable with your own feelings at
Yes.
that time.
Yes, I felt those were definitely your silences, and that you were quite obviously working during the silences.
I think part of the time too, I was looking into your face and into your eyes to see, what I was getting from you, and I think that helped me as well to come to some kind of decisions or conclusions based on the niceness that I saw coming back.
I think I have a question, Peter Ann, if you're willing. It seemed 2 or 3 times you came around to that this was a real loss, and there was something wrong, and somehow you'd failed. And yet another time it wasn't all my fault, but there was something wrong, and I was sensing for myself some feeling of angry about the loss and not being able to do anything about it. Was that off the track?
No, there's definitely some anger that I can't control that situation or could not control it at the time. But I think there's always the guilt. If a doctor could say you lost these twins because, that would be acceptable. They can't give me an answer. It's just a premature birth. And so you're kind of left without any answer. And so with that, I think I have feelings of maybe I shouldn't have washed the dishes, or maybe I shouldn't have swept the floor, but I don't know the answer. And so I think that's something that's going to be out there forever, unclear.
Now if you'll turn up the house lights, then we can get questions from the audience. I don't know that I can see well enough to really select people, but if you'd come to the center microphone, if you do have questions, one of the center microphones, and you can ask questions of me or of Peter Ann, or just make comments, whatever. Turn on the center mics, please.
There it is.
Okay, try it again.
Peter Ann, this was a question for you, and Carl, maybe you can comment on it. As I watched the interview, I had a sense that when you started out, you were at one level of talking about your experiences in the moment, of your fears about being pregnant, and the excitement and both the fear about that. And as the interview progressed, my sense was that you went from a stance where you were more, earlier on in the interview, I felt you were blaming yourself a lot and calling yourself a failure. And I noticed, or I felt, that toward the end of the interview, you seemed to be more able to entertain the notion that something was wrong and that it was not necessarily you who were wrong. And to me, that felt like one of those maybe not so minuscule changes that someone was commenting about earlier on in the therapy, and I wonder if you'd make some comments to that.
You want me to make comments to the
About,
feeling?
did you feel that? Was that an accurate perception, or did you see a change from the beginning to the end?
I think I saw a change from the beginning and the end to, I started out with my narrow scope of that I had a loss. Mm-hmm. And then I think there are so many more things that play on that I saw myself changing to not only the loss aspect, but all these other things that affect me in relation to the loss. And yes, I don't think that it is my fault. You know, and I think I tend to blame myself. I do. And I'm not sure that I'll ever get over blaming myself, and yet at this very moment I realize more and more that there's nothing I could do about that.
I guess I felt the shift from blame to loss during the course of the interview.
I was impressed too, if I can comment on that, when you said toward the end that when I said you're a failure, and you said no, not me exactly. That was very impressive, because I felt you were realizing no, it was a limited part of anything that your part in it, as far as any possible blame was concerned, was very, very limited, and it wasn't a failure of you. Perhaps one more question on the interview. Is there another question?
Yes. The picture that you get on the screen is a little different than I get when I'm looking right here, but when you were first starting and when I was looking at Peter Ann, I was seeing her face and I was seeing the colors that she chose to wear, and my first impression was, this is a woman in mourning. And I'm wondering, sometimes
My luggage didn't arrive.
Okay.
This is what I flew in yesterday.
I can often be wrong with my wonderings, and I'm wondering, Dr. Rogers, if you ever have those kinds of first impressions, and do you wonder out loud about them with your clients at all?
I guess I'd put it more broadly. Some quick impression I probably don't voice. Any persistent feeling, if I had felt, for example, that she was always on the verge of tears or something like that, yes, I would. And wait a minute. Any persistent feeling in myself, I would express. So that if I became concerned or had a certain feeling, yes, I would express that to her. But in wonderings of the sort that you're mentioning, I don't do much of that. That may be a loss to me, but I was really, for example, to be specific, I really was not aware that when she began to talk about her loss, that she also was wearing dark clothing. And so I'm quite interested to find that, well, that's due to lack of luggage, not necessarily due to choice. So I think Such wonderings perhaps are useful, but they can be overdone. I think perhaps now we've talked enough about the interview, and I certainly appreciate, Peter, and appreciate very much your willingness to come.